everybody. So welcome to Tuesdays with Audra. We are here today with Katelyn Wonsock, a CPA. So get out your pens and questions and type real fast because she loves taxes. I am excited always to bring you guys a professional in our community and figure out what they've done over the last few months to really reach out and maybe change or pivot their businesses and help us all in the community. As always, I have Chrissy Souders with me. She is always in the background making sure that we get your questions answered, and then reminds me if I miss somebody's question. So we love you, Chrissy. Thank you for doing this with us every week. All right, Katelyn, I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm so excited to be on.
I'm excited that you love taxes, and I think it's fantastic and hilarious, and you are a wealth of knowledge, so thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're actually the last interview for 2020, so I'm sure you're going to drop a whole bunch of information on us.
I'll keep everyone so entertained.
So tell us a little bit about you and how you got into accounting and got your CPA license and all that stuff.
Sure. So I am not actually from Tallahassee. I am from Jacksonville. And that was actually where I first got interested in accounting. Nobody in my family is an accountant. I am a total black sheep, which is very confusing, but I think it just kind of added a lot for why I took so much interest in the field of tax. My high school offered a business academy, so we were able to take classes that were kind of focused on business. So you could either do marketing or just kind of a general business. And the second year, so sophomore year, I was able to take an accounting class, and it was mostly bookkeeping, but I was really fascinated by it. And in the most nerdy way, I actually competed at the state level for accounting, which is literally just the dumbest and nerdiest thing ever. But I really just liked it. I was very fascinated by the topics, and I loved my teacher. So when I started at FSU, I was like, I'm going to major in accounting. And one of my RAs, who was not an accounting or finance major, told me I should just pick up finance. So I was like, sure thing. So if you're an RA out there, or we're an RA, we actually do listen to you, us children, under your roofs. But I stayed at FSU, got my undergraduate in accounting with a double major in finance, and then went back to FSU for my master's of accounting with a focus in taxation. So yeah, and Tallahassee has just been awesome. I've loved being here. I've been here 7 years now, and I've absolutely loved it. And I love the firm I work for, Carr, and Ingram. I started interning there when I was in college, so I've just taken a fancy to it all and stuck around.
So there's so many things I want to dive into there. First and foremost, I know that you have a true passion for our community, and you're very involved in nonprofits, CCYS, I think, and a few others. How did you get into that kind of side of things?
I always like giving back. I felt like I didn't do it as much as I possibly could have when I was growing up, just volunteering. I think the extent of me volunteering growing up was volunteering at the public library, which was great. I, at one point, was like, wow, I could totally be a librarian, but there's not a lot to do there, but read, I guess. So, when I started at college, I got really involved with the United Way and doing things. It was actually kind of where I got my first experience in tax, which was the VITA program, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. So I started doing that when I was a sophomore in college. Requires no experience whatsoever. You learn how to prepare tax returns for people that are in low income areas. And that really just kind of got my foot in the door for getting a flood of United Way emails and being able to participate in a lot of activities and events that are going on. And I think as I've become more involved with other groups in Tallahassee, like the Network of Young Professionals, they're always encouraging, volunteer work. They always have an event going on or planned, or somebody that can coordinate an event with you. So I've just tried to really take on those opportunities. I mean, most Saturdays, all I'm doing is sleeping in. So why not get up and do something productive with your morning and feel good about it? So
absolutely. So what fascinates you about taxes? Because the majority of the population is like, oh, it's such a pain. What is it that really draws you in?
I think first and foremost, like I said, no one in my family is an accountant, and I think I became very aware of bills, like having to pay bills when I was really young, and just kind of like that stress I would see in people was always like so I mean, not necessarily heartbreaking, but like it just hurts when you see someone you love and they're like stressed out about a bill. And, you know, when I first started studying accounting, I didn't actually want to go into taxes. That sounded really boring and unexciting to me. But I kept getting opportunities in it. And I realized how rewarding it is, because as a CPA, you're not the IRS. You're trying to help people. You know, everything we're doing is legal. But, you know, we want to make sure that we are maximizing your deductions and we're, you know, recognizing everything as appropriate, but we want to get you a refund, or as close to green as we possibly can, whether that's through planning or, you know, just working with you throughout the year and getting to know people and their stories. I think just being able to kind of alleviate that burden, because I was always raised like, oh, taxes, ooh, like nobody ever wanted to do it. My mom is afraid of the word forms. So, I mean, it's just, nobody wants to do it.
Everybody grew up that way. That was like, ooh, taxes.
Yeah, so I think I just, you know, once I started learning about it, you know, there's so much research that can go into it. I love learning. Like, I'm a constant learner. I think you're the same way, Audra. So, you know, it was just always something that like kept changing, and there was so much development, and there's also so much gray area. I mean, people see taxes as so black and white, but it's like there's so much interpretation that can go on there. And I think just working with people, which is really funny because, you know, I used to be a very introverted person, and I think that just kind of working in public accounting, which being an accountant sounds weird to say, that it kind of makes you a little bit more extroverted, but it just really helps, and it's so rewarding to work with others and kind of build that puzzle of taxes. So
yes. And I mean, as a business coach and a business owner myself, I know that the most important part of running your business is knowing your numbers. And even as a business owner myself, I find struggles in certain areas, making sure that I fully understand and are able to understand my numbers, what they mean, what my margins mean, all of that stuff. So I really applaud you, because you are proficient and an expert and an authority in an area that is so incredibly important to business owners and individuals, you know, to know tax, but especially to business owners. So what are some of the things that you really help business owners understand and get their brain around, in addition to taxes? Like,
I think a lot of it is just kind of
fall, and what's a deduction, you know, like.
Yeah. And that's what I always get questions on, are like deductions. I had a client come in the other week, and he just came on as a client of our firm. And, you know, we were talking about his 2019 taxes, and he was like, yeah, so, you know, my CPA was telling me how meals are no longer deductible. So that just really took a chunk off of, you know, what I could have possibly claimed. And I was like, no, meals are definitely deductible. And I think that people forget how much, you know, what you do for your business. I mean, you're spending that money. You should be recognizing that as an expense. You know, there's so many opportunities for claiming things, and I think people overlook them because they get worried that the IRS is just going to, you know, I don't know what people are afraid the IRS is going to do to them, but they're afraid of something.
Take them to jail. I know a couple of people that are like, I'm so afraid that they're going to audit me and take me to jail. And I'm like,
yeah,
the really big business is about this big. I don't think that you're, you know, that's a hard one.
And I remember, you know, when I started working with the VITA program, I met an IRS agent, and he was kind of like local to the Tallahassee area. And he was just like so soft spoken, so helpful, so kind. And, you know, he loved gardening. And I was like, oh, okay.
He's all kinds of zen.
Yeah. And even if you ever call the IRS, you might be shocked by how nice they are. You know, they really aren't trying to attack you or send you to jail. They really want to help you. They don't want to have to, you know, take money from you. I mean, maybe you'll get an agent on their off day or something, but a lot of the times they want to help you. And I think that people just overthink what the IRS is going to do to them. I mean, I always, you know, tell people when they're starting a business for the first time that, you know, having that on your tax return can sometimes shoot up a red flag, even if, you know, you had very little activity, just because the IRS always wants to make sure you're reporting everything. They like collecting their money. They don't want to give you their money, but they like collecting it. So, you know, I always like talking with people and just kind of walking them through, you know, your receipts or document your receipts. There's so many apps for that now. Same thing with mileage. That can be a huge deduction for people that, you know, they drive everywhere for their business. They don't even think about tracking their miles, or it sounds so tedious to do. And there's so many apps to do that and take care of that hassle for you now. And so many of them are integrated with softwares like QuickBooks or Xero that you barely have to do any work with it. I mean, you just kind of, you know, I've heard of people that have apps on their phone where it connects to their Bluetooth and it automatically turns on that app and it'll just start tracking their miles. And all they have to do after the fact is just say if it was business or personal. And I just think it's, you know, there's so many opportunities there. And, you know, it's always changing. I mean, the biggest tax reform was 2017, but there's always updates that are happening, always, you know, new interpretations of certain laws that we always try to stay on top of. And that's what we do during our sliver points in the season, but we do it throughout the year. So, you know, there's just always opportunity. And I always like talking with people like, yes, just enter everything in. We can go back and look through it all, just track all of your expenses. So, yeah.
So, and obviously we're coming up to the end of the year and most people, their businesses run, you know, January to December. So they're starting to collect all of their things to get together for their accountant. What are some tips or some suggestions that you would give those small businesses, business owners for end of year preparation?
Being proactive.
They don't bring you like, you know, a grocery bag full of receipts and some crumpled up pieces of paper and bank receipts.
I've gotten information on cardboard. Someone literally tore a piece of cardboard off a box and gave it to me. And I was like, cool. So, you know, that happens. It happens. And, you know, you just kind of go with it. You know, we get information in various different formats, you know, whether that's electronic or physically receiving all of those receipts. And it's something that CPA is always happy to do, go through all of that information. But, you know, if you're proactive and throughout the year, you track that all, even in something as simple as Excel or even just your bank statements, if every month you print out your bank statement and you just fill in, you know, what exactly that charge was for. Was it supplies? Was it just miscellaneous? You know, being proactive throughout the year can help you so much, especially with planning, because I think a lot of small business owners, they just kind of dread that tax burden at the end of the year. They're kind of like, oh, April 15th, time to file. When you can really be taking care of that and kind of cut any interest and penalties throughout the year. If you work with your accountant or any accountant, you know, just kind of talking through what the year looked like. And you don't know what the year looked like unless you're, you know, being proactive and tracking everything. You don't have to invest in something like QuickBooks or Xero. You know, those are great products and great resources because you can physically see what things look like and where you are in the year, but it's not necessary. I mean, if you want to keep it as simple as just tracking it in an Excel document on paper, we have people bring in those huge, I forget what they're called, but they're big green sheets and they have columns all down it and they just hand write in every single detail of their year. You know, it works and people do it and it's completely fine to do it that way. It gives you a picture of the year, physically a picture sometimes. And I think that helps. I think just being proactive and kind of keeping track of things throughout the year really helps. If you want to cut your costs with a CPA, do that because otherwise we're going to be tallying everything up and that takes time. You know, we're not trying to rip anybody off, but it's going to take time. And yeah. So, you know,
what point would you suggest that a small business owner transfer to something like QuickBooks or Xero? Like, would you say if you have a threshold of like, you know, you've hired your first employee or you happen to have a lot of supplies or inventory, or what point would you suggest that?
Really, it depends on comfort level. You know, I think it helps, especially if you have a business partner or anyone else that kind of works with you in your business, whether that's an employee or just contracted labor. It just makes it so much more efficient when you can track everything through, you know, the internet, basically, because you can link that up to your credit card, your bank account, your loans. You can integrate that all into software. I mean, we have people that do that with their personal financing. They put everything into QuickBooks and they just track it all that way. They don't have a business. They don't have a rental property. They just want to see what the picture looks like. And, you know, that's something you can have a CPA do. We do that for people, you know, and it just kind of helps get an idea of what the year looks like and kind of give it to you in a little bit of a cleaner presentation. I think definitely if you have employees, you should definitely be using a service like QuickBooks, just because it integrates that payroll feature, makes it a lot easier. And it also keeps you on top of reconciling. I mean, I don't.
You can have accountant access.
Yeah, it's a lot of those systems are cloud-based now. The online systems are fantastic for that. They have mobile apps. They are very user-friendly. I have people that are well beyond my age that are capable of using them. So, a lot of these apps are made for everybody. And I think that, and just the websites in general, they're made for everybody. And I think once it becomes too much of a hassle, if you're kind of really just putting off and dreading that idea of having to look through a year worth of statements or Excel sheets or something, just integrate it. Just do a trial. A lot of those have 14 to 30-day trials that are completely free, and you can see which one you like the color scheme of more, or which one you just like using. I mean, they're very user-friendly. Most of those softwares avoid the words like debit and credit, which everybody is afraid of. So,
especially when backwards.
Yeah. So, I think once it sounds like a burden to keep track of your activity, I think it's time to upgrade to one of those softwares because it's a minimal expense in the long run, and it'll save you so much of a headache because they learn as you use them, and it just saves you time.
And now
your time is money.
If you're a small business owner and you're thinking of doing those types of things, now is a good time because starting with January, you kind of started clean. I would also suggest for anybody that's listening and considering, contact your accountant and find out what systems they're proficient in as well, or they have support, because I know that Carr, and Ingram, you guys have folks in your office that can help with QuickBooks trying to figure that out and learn it, as well as Xero, right?
Yeah, we have people that are trained pretty much on every software. I don't think that there's any software that we haven't seen yet. I mean, I have some clients that prefer just using GoDaddy or Square because they can produce, financial statements essentially. And if that's how you want to track it, then don't change it. I mean, if it's working for you, then it's good. And we see it all. So, I mean, most CPAs and accountants, we're familiar with everything that's available right now. So just reach out.
Yeah. And I know that you work with all different types of businesses. Whether they be little bitty mom and pops or one-man shows, all the way up to large corporations and nonprofits. You guys kind of do it all, right?
We do. We are a full-service accounting firm.
Do you have, and I hate to ask, but do you have kind of where your passion is, or style of business or type of business or size of business that you really like to work with?
I love working with startups, people that are sole proprietors. I love working with them because they're normally so passionate about what they're doing. And I think it's just that whole thing with, taxes seem like such a burden to them that if that's the one thing I could take off their plate and get to know them as a person in their business, I would love that. And I love doing that. That's really what got me involved with Domi Station here in Tallahassee. I love working with the people that come out of there because they are just so fantastic and they're always so passionate about what they're doing. No matter what it is. I mean, there's so many different businesses in Tallahassee, and I absolutely love. I think that was one of the biggest draws for me is how big that entrepreneurial spirit is here in Tallahassee. I mean, it's just awesome, and I love working with small businesses and sole proprietors. So, yeah.
Do you find yourself doing quite a bit of educating?
A bit, yeah. Yeah, I love talking about taxes. So I was just talking to somebody yesterday. He was looking for a new CPA, and I was like, and he was kind of like, oh, I mean, do I have to commit with you for life or anything? And I was like, no, I mean, I love educating people. I mean, my sister is a graphic design person. I mean, her brain is very much in that creative realm. She has no idea what's happening with taxes. But I try every year explaining to her what itemized deductions are and just kind of how that impacts your taxes. And I think that there's so much to gain when you can understand what's on your tax return, even if it's at a very basic level. I think the more you can learn about it, the better. So I always like being there with clients to just kind of give them a little bit more of a walkthrough rather than being like, sign here and,
Right.
It just
and this is the bottom line and this is what you owe.
Yeah, it has so much more value when you understand what's actually on there and what's happening in your year and, how to plan for the future.
Into planning, what really what's the conversation around planning, and what time of year do you do it?
It happens year round. So with taxes, you can make 4 quarterly estimated payments. Sometimes once you hit a certain level with your income or your activities, you are required to make those payments. And those can be made throughout the year. You can make many, many payments. And we have people that'll be like, I'll just pay in every month. And then people that don't want to pay at all, but they still like to know where they're standing. And, whether that's just a quarterly check-in, mid-year check-in, or especially right now around November, December, and January, we're doing a lot of estimated taxes, just talking with people and kind of getting that conversation. I mean, 2020 has really been a year that incentivized us to touch base with our clients, because there's some that we really only see once a year, and that's kind of how they like it. So we're like, okay, if you're happy that way, then we're happy that way. But I think that this year has just given us a lot of reason to reach out to clients, see how they are, see what's happening, what's changing, and just really spark that conversation of let's talk through this year. Let's talk about what's happened and, catch up on life. I mean, it's more than just, you're my client kind of relationship. It's a real relationship. I mean, there's so many clients that I'm friends with. I know that scatters all the way towards our partners. They have very long lasting relationships with people that are their clients. They've worked with them for 40 plus years, or they've known them since they were kids, or, it's a deep relationship. And we want to make sure it's more of a conversation about what happened in their year, and then kind of interpreting that in our tax focused brains and, putting that onto paper, like, okay, let's talk about it. Like, let's see how that impacted you and what you should be expecting. So just that conversation.
Do you use that planning? And I know that you guys are very relationship based, and I've been delighted to know a couple of the accountants over there through networking and relationship building, and you guys are phenomenal. And the whole company does lots of nonprofit stuff as well, so you're very involved in the community. I didn't want to skip over that, but my brain's over here going, okay, so what does this planning conversation look like? And if, let's say, this year has been so unpredictable, and you have businesses that, started out really good, so you had the planning that you had set in place, but then the middle of the year, the bottom falls out of their business. And how do you sit down and have that conversation as to, okay, what are the tax implications of that? When I had a plan based on this over here, and now my business is here, do you sit down and reevaluate? And how does that work out?
Yeah, and that's kind of how it goes. I mean, if you think about something, gyms are the first thing that came to mind for me, because, we have some clients that are gym owners, and they had to shut down entirely for a period of time. And I think that was just a huge gap, whether they ended up going virtual or just finding another means of income. That was a huge change for a lot of people. And I think that's just really where that conversation becomes important, because, I mean, there's so many times where I wonder, how do so many of the partners in my firm know their clients? Like, you can just mention their name and they're like, oh yes, this person with that business, and they have a dog named this. And, they just remember everything. And I'm like, how do you recall all this information? But then I kind of will backtrack and look at my list of clients and be like, oh yes, all of these people, I know all these people, they all have my cell phone number. And, it's kind of, it becomes a conversation where you're always thinking about these people. They're always top of mind. And you just kind of want to check in with them, especially when you hear, a big change happens, whether that's just with the state of Florida and, what's open, what's closed, or just new guidance that's coming out, and just be like, hey, we should get together. We should have a conversation. Let's talk about what's going on. And, if you're able to really motivate them and get them to kind of send over, their financials, kind of what the year has looked like so far, or kind of comparing that to if you did a mid-year check-in in June, and then, we're coming up on December now, from like, hey, what did everything look like through October or November? And just kind of comparing that and see what things have changed. I've been encouraging a lot of people to send me kind of like a month by month look of what their year has been, because that can impact, what the IRS tries to penalize you for when you make estimated payments, because you're like, well, I didn't have income for like 4 months, so I shouldn't be penalized for not making estimated payments for 4 months. So,
right.
It becomes a lot of just staying on top of things that are happening in the world. It's not just what the IRS is saying, it's, what the state is saying, what your county is saying, and just kind of always thinking about those people and, how you can best advise them. I mean, sometimes they end up calling me. They're like, hey, I have to close my business, or hey, like, this is changing. What do I do? Or like, what do I need to be prepared for? And it's kind of like, you have to be ready with those answers, because I don't want to have to call them back like 3 weeks later, and then they have a whole new situation going on. So, always just being on top of that stuff is so important.
It is. And from my perspective as a coach, you're dealing with probably the most delicate topic that you can have for a business owner, which is money. I mean, we know and we love what we do because we have a passion or a skill set or a talent for something, and money just happens to be the currency that we get paid for doing that thing that we love. But most of us didn't grow up in an environment where it's an open topic, that money in our family or money in our environment. And so you're sitting down having to talk about the most sensitive thing that they could think of in their business. And how do you really get around that and make your clients feel comfortable with, yes, this is a conversation that you need to have, that's healthy to have, and that money's not scary, taxes aren't scary, they're just something that you have to pay as, you know, part of being a citizen of this country type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it is a very uncomfortable conversation. I mean, I feel like I still struggle with talking to clients or prospective clients about billing. I'm like, I don't want to think about the billing. I want to do the taxes and not pay. I don't know. So it is just kind of a hurdle to get over, to kind of break that wall and kind of make them comfortable. I mean, having word of mouth, you know, referrals, people that are kind of like, I love this person, please go talk to them. I mean, there's so many people that are like, hey, so-and-so told me about you. You know, it sounds like it's a great conversation, and that helps so much because there's already that level of trust. You know, just they already trust that one person, and then that person refers them to you. And it's like, okay, well, like, I'm going to do a great job now because I want to keep living up to that expectation and, you know, really just strive for it. And I think, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit of working with that person. It might need to be, you know, 1 year, they just take a hard hit with taxes because they didn't want to have that conversation. And then you kind of explain how, you know, working together throughout the year, making those planning dates. And, you know, even if you just want to set them up, I mean, I'm happy to have a sticky note with your name on it on my computer, just kind of reminding me to touch base with you every month or every quarter or midpoint of the year. You know, it's all about checking in and building that trust in that relationship. And I mean, eventually I'm looking at your social security number like frequently. So, I mean, it's like, I know who you are. You should probably trust me. I mean, it's in our name. That's what a CPA does. You know, we're very much focused on our ethics. We want to make sure that we're helping the public. I mean, that's a huge part of what we're doing. We're not here to just file your taxes. We're here to know you and to serve you as a person. So, or as a business.
Yeah. And that's so important. I mean, and I suggest that all my clients have a CPA because there's inevitably things that you're not going to know. And it's going to take you 3 times as long or 4 times as long to try to figure it out on your own than it is to make sure that you have a professional in place that's going to make sure that you're abiding by all of your, you know, everything that you're supposed to be abiding by as a business owner. Hire a professional. I think that half the time I have clients that are like, yeah, but it's too expensive. And I was like, yes, but you could potentially get that back in deductions if you hire somebody that knows how to find them for you. And that can teach you along the way on how to, you know, pre-plan, set up your business properly. I get a lot of questions on, should I have an LLC? Should I incorporate? Should I have a partnership? Should I, you know, and a lot of that has to do with your tax filing. And speaking to a CPA is the appropriate way to figure out what designation you need to have for your business. In my eyes, do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I always tell people, you know, especially when they're, you know, coming on as, you know, a prospect, if they're just kind of like, let's have a conversation, like, hey, can we, you know, grab coffee or something? You know, I'm not going to charge you for sitting down and talking about taxes with me. If you're just kind of interested or wanting to pick my brain or have me pick your brain. You know, I love what I do. I love the firm I work for. You don't go into taxes for no reason. Right? You know, it's something that it's something that I like doing, and I love talking about it and, you know, working with people. And I think it can pay off so much when you keep in touch with a CPA, and we're always willing to work with you. I mean, we have to pay bills too. And I just think that there's so much value you can get out of working with CPAs. They say that like millions and billions of dollars every year can go unclaimed in refunds because people don't realize what's available to them. And I just working with a CPA. I mean, it may take a couple of years to really start seeing that value. It may just take that one time of working with them, but there's so much benefit, in my opinion, working with a professional. I mean, you don't want me fixing your toilet, so like, yeah, go with someone you trust, and you know that's exactly service for you, and there's value there.
Well, is there anything that you kind of want to, any additional information that you want to put out to our business owners out in the community as advice or anything that about yourself? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, always be open for that conversation. You know, I'm always available. I love coffee. Let's grab some. Let's eat food. I love food. And just talk. I mean, I love getting to know people and their stories and kind of how they've ended up where they are and what their biggest plans are. And I think that just being proactive in your life and, you know, getting in those contact spheres of professionals, even if you don't think you'll ever work with that person. I mean, no offense to you, Audra, I didn't think I would ever need a business coach in my life, but I'm like, she's fantastic to know. I mean, like every time you speak, you know, we're in a leads group every week, and you know, when we connect, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel like my day is going to be so much more productive. And I'm like, okay, Audra needs to stay in my life now. So, you know, I think that it's so important to just connect with people, even if you don't think you're ever going to work with them. You never know when you'll have a question. And
absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh God. I feel like being invisible would be really cool, just because I like to think that then I could take naps in weird places. Sometimes I just get tired.
I think that's a fantastic reason to want to be invisible. Just so that, you know, you can lay down wherever and take a nap.
Exactly.
It's not awkward.
No questions asked.
I love your sense of humor. Well, thank you so much. Okay, so tell everybody how to get in contact with you, and then we'll end the show. Yeah,
well, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on most of the social media platforms, Katelyn Wonsock. You can contact me at 𝐏𝐚𝐫𝐭𝐬𝐨, just my first initial and last name. It's on the screen right here. At 𝐶RICPA.com, or check out our website, 𝐶RICPA.com. And you can find tons of resources, tons of events, all of the good stuff. So
yeah. And if you just have a question about taxes, accounting, call Katelyn. She'll help you out. Thank you so much for being on the show today. That was so much wonderful information, and I hope all of our listeners grab something that they can use for their business, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Audra. I appreciate you having me on here.
I see you guys in the new year.